to start over.
Okay, that's fine. So intro broadcast, I'm here. Okay, fantastic. So hold on.
Just making sure.
It's just 3 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. All right. Hi, everybody. Sorry for the brief delay there. This is Mary Watkins. I'm principal of Mansfield High School. And I want to welcome you to tonight's presentation regarding our plans to return to full in-person for Mansfield High School students on April 28th. You'll see at the banner on the bottom of your screen a tiny URL. If you have any questions tonight at any point during the presentation, pull up another tab on your computer, type in the tiny URL, and that's going to take you to a Google form where you can type in your name, ask your question, and then those are going to get uploaded to a Google Doc over here, and I'm going to try to address them at the end of the presentation. So any questions you have at any time, you can go and fill out that Google form. I think before I start tonight, I would like to express a big thank you to the assistant principals of Mansfield High School, Tim Tahasik, Abby Barless, and Jim Schlefke, who have done a fantastic job this year and put all the work into coordinating getting our students back in at every phase. They have done a tremendous job. They have supported me all of last spring, over the summer, and throughout this entire school year, and I really could not have done it all without them. So Abby, Tim, and Jim, who are here behind the scenes, thank you all so much. Okay. So next, why is this happening now? For most students, in-person learning provides the best educational experience. Social, academic, extracurricular. It's the proven learning model. And at this point, the Commissioner of Education has required leaders to get students back to school without delay. The expectation was put out for elementary and middle grades first, followed by high schools. No formal date has been set for high schools by the Commissioner. However, the Commissioner has charged us with coming up with a plan for getting back and advised us that we will have 2 weeks notice before having to execute that plan. So, that is exactly what we're doing, is planning. At the high school level, students follow highly individualized pathways. It's a complex undertaking when accounting for 3 feet social distancing at full capacity. So we are working hard to go ahead and get all the moving parts and pieces underway to get us back on the date that we've selected in district, which is April 28th. And I'm going to talk about why that date in just a moment. So I want to address one question first, and that is, what are our cohort options? And specifically also, what about seniors? Do they have any options here? So students currently enrolled in the virtual remote cohort may remain there with their current schedules. At present, we're not expecting any teacher changes. All of our hybrid and daily cohort students will be expected to return to full in-person on Wednesday, April 28th. I put information out, but if you have any questions about migrating between cohorts, definitely review the newsletter from this last Friday, and also the one that I just sent out earlier today. We're going to put it all online too, so there are plenty of places where you can sort of cross-reference all of that material. I'm going to speak very clearly and honestly here when I say that at this point in the school year, I do not recommend a cohort change unless for very serious health, physical health, or mental health concerns for your child, because it is very disruptive to their schedule, either coming into daily hybrid or going from daily hybrid into the virtual remote cohort. That said, if you do wish to schedule a cohort change in time for April 28th, please be sure to complete the change request form. Again, there was a link in Friday's newsletter and also a link in the newsletter that I sent out today. Make sure that you complete that by this Friday, April 2nd. I also want to make it clear that starting April 28th, teachers in the building will no longer be required to live stream. The only truly virtual option for students to continue to make progress toward the graduation requirements will be via the virtual remote cohort, the VRC. And yes, time on learning is still being measured for seniors, and the last day of school for seniors is May 26th. I wish that we had a little more flexibility available to seniors, but as long as those time on learning requirements are in place, they are expected to come in for the full days in person. Okay. Then why April 28th specifically? It's on a Wednesday, which I know to some people may not make a lot of sense. I'll just start with saying that we are already slated to run in-school SAT testing for registered juniors on April 27th, which is the Tuesday after we come back on Monday from April vacation. On that Tuesday, we will have a fully remote day for all non-test taking students. So right now, I think we have 176 members of the junior class registered for SATs. So any junior who's not registered will stay home and access their classes, live instruction, or excuse me, remote virtual live streaming from their teacher. And 9th, 10th, and 12th graders will be expected to do the same thing. So students will be having a fully remote day with synchronous learning from their teachers, unless they're taking the SAT. So in any case, we also chose that week because we need firm return dates in order to plan for MCAS testing, which continues to be a graduation requirement. MCAS testing takes a good 5-ish days. And given the fact that we have to get AP testing off the ground too, that window in May is incredibly tight, and we need virtually all 4 weeks in order to get all of that standardized testing off the ground. So we went ahead and went with the date that allowed us to get and fit all of those pieces of testing in place. But we decided it would make more sense to just come back on a Wednesday rather than coming back fully in person on Monday, going fully remote on Tuesday, and so on. So that's how we landed on that date. All right, how will the school day be impacted? So in order to ensure a minimum of 3 feet between all students in the classrooms and 6 feet at lunch, we're implementing several changes. We're having to relocate between 30 and 40 class sections to totally new classrooms. So your child may have one class in their schedule where everybody fits in a cohort model, no problem. But once we bring the entire class back together, we cannot fit all the students in at that 3 feet that is necessary and what's required by the CDC. So we've had then to reassign those class sections to larger classroom space that can better accommodate. Gym classes will definitely be moved out of the gym. We're going to be relying on nice spring weather to get students outside, and on rainy days, we'll probably be moving students to empty classrooms at that point, whatever we have open each period. So we're working that out with the Health and Wellness Department, incredibly flexible group of people. They're wonderful. And we're taking over the gym actually because it now needs to become a cafeteria. In order for us to be able to seat students at 6 feet apart at lunch, which is still the requirement when masks are off, we need both the cafeteria, the library, and now the gym. If you've driven by the high school lately, you can see that we have a big tent set up. So we're going to be utilizing that if students want to eat under there. If the weather's a little bit bad, there's a driving rain, may not be feasible. But we certainly want to encourage students to eat outside as much as possible. So in addition, we're going to revert to the typical waterfall rotation. We have 7 periods. Students are assigned 7 classes. Every day, 6 periods meet and you drop one, you pick it up the next day and you continue through the rotation. So it'll be a daily rotation similar to what we've had in past years. Class timeframes are going to remain the same though. So basically, the schedule that students are used to, just like in terms of length of class in the hybrid model, is going to remain the same. As far as the lunch schedule goes, I think lunch schedules are largely going to remain the same. It may be that we have to reassign some class sections to, maybe they currently eat second lunch, maybe now they need to eat first lunch, but it should just be a few small changes. So we're not expecting to have to do a lot with lunch schedules. After-school activities and help will resume in person in a limited capacity starting April 29th. That plan allows for 2 days in person with late buses, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more as we get further into the presentation. Again, we're committed to the proven instructional model and to full in-person learning. Live streaming will not be required of staff. And I'm going to talk a little bit further about quarantine and coronavirus on the next slide, and then further how we're going to work to educate students who may need to be quarantined. But just quickly, here's the full schedule rotation So you can see we have days A through G. If you started on a Monday with day A, you would go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So A through E, that would be what the class schedule looks like. And then the following week, you would pick it up on Monday with an F day and a G day. And then on Wednesday, we would start again with an A day. So this is what the rotation is going to look like for students at this point. All right, what about coronavirus? What about quarantine? I know this is really front and center on everyone's mind. With a greater volume of students, I have to be very clear and say that we do expect a greater number of quarantines. Even though the CDC is allowing students to sit as close as 3 feet in school, if a student were to come down and be diagnosed with coronavirus, we would be required to quarantine any student who was within 6 feet of that student, under 6 feet of that student, for at least 15 minutes, which could certainly occur in a 47, 49-minute class period. But I want to be very clear and say that that said, to date, we have no verified cases of any student testing positive for COVID-19 after sitting in class at 3 feet with a student who's been diagnosed with COVID. So that is the up-to-date data from Mansfield High School. We do not have a single verified case of a student catching coronavirus from another student in class at, whatever feet they are. Right now, we do have a fair number of classrooms that are arranged at 3 feet. Even saying it, I would have had a hard time processing that, I think probably in September at the very beginning of the school year, but that is what the data clearly indicates. And what that tells me is that the mitigation measures work. Wearing a mask, aimed the same direction in class, seated at some footage apart, definitely works. So I think, I've had a couple of parents call me this week and last asking, is my child safe? And I think what I have shared with them is that the odds of your child catching coronavirus in the structured classroom environment is quite low based on our data. The odds of getting quarantined in the structured classroom environment is certainly going to be higher. But I just want to reiterate to everyone that while quarantine is frustrating, it's an inconvenience, it's lonely, it is different from testing positive for coronavirus. We may and probably will have additional quarantines as we come back to school. But I'm going to share with you on the next slide what we're going to do to provision for your child if your child is identified as a close contact and needs to go into quarantine. Okay. So actually, let me do this slide first, and then I'm going to come back to the other one. So if my child is quarantined, how are you going to educate them? So here's our tentative plan. We're still working out some of the finer details here, but students who are quarantined will engage in the asynchronous learning model, which is something we were using very heavily toward the beginning of the school year. And that is those students will connect with their teachers via a Google Meet at the start of every class session. Attendance will be taken. If your child shows up at the start of the class block, they will be marked virtually present. The teacher will use that mini Google Meet session to make an assignment, set the learning expectations for the student. The students can certainly ask some questions right there at the initial check-in, and the teacher will identify what deliverable is going to be due. I want to make it clear, though, that this option is available to quarantined students only via notification from the nurse to the teacher, and that is how that will flow. In addition, we're dedicating Tuesdays and Wednesdays after school to quarantine student meetings with teachers only. So students can schedule Google Meet appointments with their teacher for a little bit of additional time. The focus will be individualized small group time for content review and questions. And truly our goal is to have quarantine students return to school and pick right up with the curriculum with as little disruption as possible. So now I'm going to go back one and just quickly review the mitigation measures that we have in place already, plus one new one at Mansfield High School. I'll start with the new one. So we're going to be implementing barcodes for lunch. So basically, students will take their student IDs with barcodes on the back. They can take a picture of it, and then have that scanned as they go through the lunch line. So that's going to help with double the number of students, getting our students quickly through the lunch line without people having to touch things. We're going to continue with one-way hallways. We're going to continue to place time limits to unstructured time. We're going to be having hand sanitizer at all key entry and exit points and staff there in the morning in particular to encourage students to use it. Staff at the entry points in the morning will continue to be available with extra masks in hand to make sure that students, if they don't have a mask, have one. And also to just check masks, just a look to make sure that everybody has their mask properly placed over their nose. We'll continue with mask breaks at will. So whenever a student needs a break, they can take one in designated areas. We're going to continue to run phased exits off of buses to prevent crowding at the doors. So basically every morning I go through and I point to the first bus. Once I see 2 kids jump off, then I go to the second one. And that just allows a kind of a slower trickle of students into the building so that there's not a big traffic jam at the door. We'll continue to post reminders to students about hand washing. We're going to continue to engage in rigorous contact tracing and quarantine measures. We're going to maintain 6-foot distance after school, certainly for our after-school club activities, and as much as we possibly can within athletics. We're going to continue to ensure proper ventilation at school. We have brought in an outside assessor to look at the ventilation in the school. We did that earlier this year and, tuned up where needed. So we're going to continue to keep a close eye on that through the remainder of the school year. Certainly, we're going to be reminding students not to congregate at doors or hang out in groups in the hallway, and remind them, again, that bathroom breaks should be occurring during class and not during passing time. Okay. So then the next question is, what is required of my family and how can we help? And I do want to take a moment here to say that we absolutely need everyone's support in order to make the next 2.5 months work. We need the community, families, staff, and students. Please, as much as you're able, use multiple mitigation strategies outside of school. Certainly here lately, things are opening back up again. It gives me hope. It feels hopeful. I love having a little bit of additional freedom. And all of that is allowed. But at the same time, I also know in the back of my head that just a few cases of coronavirus at Mansfield High School may lead to many quarantines due to our close physical proximity in the classroom and the current CDC regulations regarding who must be quarantined and how many feet apart they can be. So I am just requesting that please, if you socialize, wear a mask or 2, stand at 6 feet distance in a well-ventilated area, certainly wash your hands frequently, and if you feel unwell, please get tested. Second, I would encourage you to reset expectations with your teenager. Explain what's at stake, and then review multiple mitigation strategies with them and also your family expectations. In addition, please continue to check for COVID-19 symptoms with your child daily. Don't send your child to school and contact a nurse if your child has any COVID-19 symptoms, or certainly if your child is identified as a close contact. Fourth, please respect the quarantine requirements and travel advisory. Students traveling to high-risk states must test negative within 72 hours of arrival back in Massachusetts or quarantine for 10 days. And then finally, if you would just please continue to cooperate with and respect our nurses during contact tracing. Our nurses have done just a fantastic job. They work 7 days a week. Every time a name pops up in the Maven system and it's someone associated with our school, they are taking the lead with families, and in many cases, the first to share with the family that their child has contracted coronavirus or that their child needs to quarantine. Those are all very difficult conversations, and they're having them 7 days a week. I'm incredibly grateful to our nurses. They are professional through and through. Next one is, what is required of students? Our students have done a great job with mask use, so I would just ask that they keep up the good work there. One area where I think we need a little bit of reinforcement, is following the directional hallway arrows. I get it. It's frustrating. We have to take the long way around. All of us do. Administrators, teachers, everybody. And I think we all just need to get a little reboot here, me included, I think everybody, with the directional hallway arrows. And so we're all going to recommit to following those arrows, even though there's a faster way to get there. So I'll be reviewing that with students and staff in the days to come. Again, students should only be taking bathroom breaks during class, not during passing time. We do that just to limit the number of students that might be in the labs at any one time. They need to wash their hands, bring only what's needed for school, follow all the routines that we have in place, arrival, lunch, after school activities, and most importantly, to follow those CDC guidelines outside of school. The structured classroom environment is frankly one of the safest places a student can be in terms of not contracting coronavirus. And we have the data to show it at MHS. Where there is less structure is where there is more likelihood of contracting coronavirus. So please just keep that in mind. And I will be reiterating all that with students as well. So are there any changes to parking, drop-off, and busing? So we're still working on this a little bit. I am glad that we have up through April 28th to just finalize all of our plans, but I can tell you so far, juniors are definitely going to be required to park at Memorial Park. Seniors who already have a parking spot will be able to continue to have a parking spot, but it will be reassigned more than likely, because right now we have students sharing a parking spot. The Cohort A seniors and the Cohort B seniors are sharing spots. Seniors who haven't registered may be able to do so. We haven't verified that just yet, but spots are not going to be guaranteed. It'll be a lottery system. Again, this applies for any senior who isn't currently registered, who didn't apply at the beginning of the school year. As far as drop-off goes, I mean, yes, we can expect more traffic on April 28th for sure. I've been meeting with our school resource officers, our director of facilities, director of finance, trying to come up with a plan to better relieve some of the congestion on East Street, but also maintain safety in the lot. So we have a new drop-off scheme, which we are considering piloting the week before April vacation. So there will be more to come on this. I think we want to try it, see what it looks like with half the students in. And then if we get some data that looks good, then we may continue to move forward with that when we come back fully in person. So more to come on that. I encourage you, please, if you're dropping your child off, please drop off quickly, obviously safely. That's the most important thing. But as much as your child can kind of have their gear ready to roll and not have to go around to the side, or go to the back or wherever, is very helpful in terms of moving the traffic through. But I get it. We're all rushing to school in the morning in some cases, and 7:25 is early. All right. Let's see here. So first thing in the morning, the main lobby and the athletic wing doors are going to open at 7 a.m. for students who arrive early. Anybody who comes in from 7 a.m. on until 7:10 is going to need to sit in the cafeteria. Students are at 6 feet. We can have someone there. Usually we have no more than 10 or 15 students at that point, but as long as they are socially distanced from each other, they should be all set. Students have full access to the building starting at 7:10 a.m. And of course, classes begin. Students should be seated in classes, ready to roll at 7:25 a.m. You certainly can register your child to take the bus. If you've been dropping your child off and now you would like them to take the bus, you can do that. I have the busing information right here, and that's also posted on the district website. You can email transportation@mansfieldschools.com or call with any questions, and that's open April through June 2021. This is registering for April through June. Registration is now open, so if you want to go ahead and make that call or explore it a little bit, you're welcome to. So the next question is, how will students know what to do? We have a communication plan developed and in place for students. We're actually going to be holding virtual assemblies this week. I'm going to meet with all the students in the virtual remote cohort on Tuesday. Many of those students are going to be staying in place But I think many of them have questions. There's just a lot of, does this mean I have to move? Do I get to keep my same teacher? And I just want to talk to them directly and let them know exactly what the plan is and how that impacts or doesn't impact them. And then I'm going to be meeting with our daily hybrid cohort students on Wednesday in the morning. And I think my goal in the assemblies is just to explain to students what is going on and why in a similar fashion. I'll probably even use some student-friendly version of this presentation and what changes to expect. Students are going to see desks coming in. There's going to be a lot of changes going on between now and April vacation, and I just want them to be able to preview and know that that's going to be coming down the pike. Certainly, teachers are going to be communicating changes as well, ongoing. I would say that teachers are going to be, certainly even more important than any assembly on my part in terms of making sure that students know what to do and where to go. We're using a phased approach. My whole approach to getting us back in is one of, let's practice all the routines first before we bring everyone in. So for example, on April 5th, classroom changes that need to go into place will go down that Monday. So students will practice going to their new classrooms where they're going to be with their new cohort and get used to their new seats. From there, we're going to make any changes we need to lunches. So be it a change to the lunch schedule, maybe you were eating second block lunch and now you need to do first block lunch. First lunch versus second lunch. And the location of lunch. So maybe you're used to going to the library and now maybe you want to go sit in the gym because we'll have that open and running. We're also going to be backfilling desks into classrooms. So there's going to be a lot of furniture moving around and students are going to start seeing desks appear either during the day or overnight in their classroom spaces. And we just want everybody to get used to how it feels to have that number of desks in the classroom. When we moved all the desks out, everyone said that it felt very empty, but now we're used to it. So now we get all the desks back in and get used to how that feels. And then we'll also practice parking. We're going to reassign those parking spots and allow students to go ahead and park in new locations. And then the very last thing we'll do is bring the two cohorts together on that Wednesday. So that is the plan. I will also host a second virtual assembly on Monday, April 26th for students. And that assembly is going to focus on, frankly, behavioral expectations, just the rules of the road for getting along now that we're all back in together, and try to address more directly any anxiety or concerns that students may have. And we're probably going to try to collect student FAQ questions. Okay, I just want to remind everyone that if you do have any questions you want to submit, please make sure that you type in that tiny URL into an additional tab on your browser. It'll pull up a Google form, and then you can put your name in and put your question in. I've got a Google Doc over here, and I can see some questions coming up, but it's like not that many. So if you have any questions, please be sure to get those in there. And even if you have questions after the fact, put them in there, and we'll try to address them in some sort of FAQ document to put back out to you. So again, tiny URL banner at the bottom of the screen, and start typing questions. Okay. So let's see here. What'll April 28th look like? We're really approaching it as another first day of school. It's like our third first day of school this school year. Our goal is certainly going to be to reduce student anxiety and to personalize as much as we can. Right now, I'm really in the process of kind of talking it over with staff. Some things that we've thrown around is using like Monday and Tuesday to focus on getting to know each other again, getting everybody comfortable in the space with each other again, perhaps having some individual check-ins with students, and then allowing some time for students to maybe make up some outstanding work. So I am going to be discussing that with staff and getting their feedback on how they feel the time would be best spent. But I do think it's very important for us to go slow in order to go fast. We're all going to settle in for a day or two, and then we're really going to get learning. And I know that students are going to find that that pace is going to pick right back up when the entire school is back together for students in the daily and hybrid cohort. All right. What about after school activities? After school extra help and activities, again, are going to resume in person on Mondays and Thursdays, starting the Thursday after we come back to school on Wednesday. Students are going to need to sign up in advance, so that is a new thing, with their advisor or teacher. We want to make sure that we know who to expect and have everything arranged. Again, we're just trying to maintain as much structure in the building as possible. 6-foot distancing is going to need to be maintained during after-school activities as much as possible. We've stated that clubs and activities must remain inclusive of our virtual remote students. So students who are in the VRC should be able to participate in clubs after school. And we're actually going to allow advisors to determine whether or not they want to keep their clubs and activities that they are running fully remote or not. And I think they're just going to consider the students who are in the club and kind of what the general makeup is, maybe get the preference of the students, and then make a determination from there. Further, if you have a student who relies on the late bus, they will need to sign up for the late bus at least one day in advance in the main office. And that is because we have to have seating charts on those buses. So your child will come into the office, sign up. We'll give them very likely a little ticket that just has a row and a number so they know exactly where to sit on the bus, and we'll share that sheet with the bus driver as well. So we are pulling closer to normal, but it is not exactly the same thing. You know, students need to sign up. They need to sign up with their teacher, with their advisor. They need to sign up for the late bus. There still is a lot of structure that's going to be in place that students aren't necessarily used to in terms of after school time. So we're going to be very careful in communicating that to students as we move forward. Alrighty, so I wanted to talk a little bit here at the end regarding SATs, MCAS, and AP exams. So as I mentioned earlier, Tuesday, April 27th is going to be a full remote day for all non-test taking students. Grades 9, 10, and 12 are going to be learning from home remotely. They should follow the remote schedule, log on to every class, they'll see their teacher there, and the teacher will walk them through the lesson just as if they were there logging in remotely on a Wednesday morning, for example. Our non-testing grade 11 students will also learn from home. That is, students who have not yet registered for the SAT. Our grade 11 students who have registered for the SAT are going to be taking the bus, driving, whatever, coming in at the normal time, 7:25 a.m., and then testing at the school. SATs are a little bit longer than PSATs, so we would expect most students to have it wrapped up by 1 o'clock. We'll be sending out more information regarding SAT testing and snacks, pencils, all the things that students need to bring with them, our grade 11 students anyway. MCAS. We do have tentative dates for the grade 10 and 11 MCAS. Right now, grades 10 and 11 do need to take MCAS. There hasn't been any change that's come down from the commissioner's office on that. Our targeted dates for the math test are May 10th and 11th. That's a Monday and a Tuesday. And our dates for ELA are May 17th, 18th, and 19th. Please note that May 17th would be for our 11th grade students only, as they are taking the legacy MCAS test. One unique thing about that is that we're probably going to be running reverse half days on those days in order to accommodate both sets of students, both grades 10 and 11 in the classroom. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Essentially, we bus in grades 10 and 11 students, get them through 10:30, the vast majority of the test, and then at 10:30, bring in our 9th and 12th grade students who would have a modified rest of school day in person. So I will be sending more details on that. I'll be sending everybody a calendar so that you can hang it on the fridge and see exactly where everybody needs to go. May is going to be a very busy month. And then as we push into June, of course, our grade 9 students are expected to take the biology MCAS test on June 7th and 8th. And in that circumstance, we're pretty much following the normal testing schedule. And then lastly, AP testing will be going down the last 2 weeks of May and the first week, a little bit of the second week of June. We've selected the, I want to say, second and third testing sessions available from the College Board for AP exams. And we tried to give students as much flexibility in selecting a testing date based on their needs. So those testing dates are pretty much locked in. Okay, so then last slide, will the plan change? Well, at this point, I hope this represents the final plan for the school year. We continue to await further guidance on DESE. I feel very confident that once the commissioner comes out with final instructions for the high school, that we will be sitting down and reviewing this plan, looking at numbers and making a determination regarding, is this the best choice for our students at this time? I mean, I have to say this entire school year has been one large evolving situation. And so we are going to continue to remain flexible and go with the flow and make decisions in the best interest of students and staff. And certainly we'll keep you and students informed of any changes as we go. I think above all, I truly look forward to bringing everybody back in person. I look forward to seeing all of our students and for seeing all of them reconnect with each other. That is going to feel fantastic. It's going to be a big win for our students. And we're going to do everything that we can to keep everybody healthy and happy in school through the remainder of the school year. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I'm not finished yet, though. I've got my form over here, and I'm going to start reading some of these questions and trying to address the questions that you've submitted. If you have additional questions, please go ahead and, again, type in the tiny URL in a separate browser and send the question via Google Form, and I will do my best to answer it. Okay. So the first question I have here is, I heard that the date would be 4/28, but that is very close to the return from April vacation. Some families might travel during that time, and I'm concerned that students would return to school en masse without following quarantine guidelines. I certainly understand that. We've had other people raise that question. Certainly, we were in a similar scenario when we came back from the December break. And this is where we're relying on families that choose to travel to follow the quarantine guidelines and keep us informed. It really is incumbent on all of us as a community to make this happen, working together. So we're just asking that families follow those guidelines. We did come back to school in January. I know that some parents just elected to keep their kids home because they didn't quite feel comfortable at that point. And I certainly understand why parents made that decision. But again, we just need everyone to please follow the guidelines so that we can all come back to school. Let's see, will students who are 14 days post-second vaccination have to quarantine? So the answer is no to that. They would be told that they're a contact and would need to monitor themselves for symptoms. And that is actually coming from one of our nurses right now. It says there are 100 people quarantining now. What would push the school to go remote? I'll tell you, the key indicator that would push the school to go remote actually, I'm going to back that up. There is no one indicator that would push us to go remote, but the thing we would be looking at is in-school transmission of COVID-19. Right now, we haven't had a single case of in-school transmission of COVID-19. So remember, students are quarantined, but they don't have COVID. It would be in-school transmission. And at that, I think the stated numbers are somewhere around 1.5% of in-school transmission of COVID-19 that would push us to go remote. With the rapid rise in cases under age 19, is it possible that full return for high school may be deferred? It could be possible. I don't really know. That would be definitely dictated by the Commissioner of Education at that level. I know, based on my reading of notes taken from the commissioner's last meeting on Friday, I think the official notes that were sent out is that they're definitely keeping an eye on cases among teenagers. They're definitely keeping that eye. And again, once we get the final information from the commissioner on our required return date, we'll certainly, I'm sure, be convening at the district level with school committee to review everything with a keen eye to make sure that we are making the best decision that's in the best interest of our students. Let's see. Regarding the travel from out-of-state requirements for quarantine, Massachusetts no longer keeps a map of high-risk states. Therefore, how do we know what the quarantine requirement is? I would advise you to look for sure on our Returning and Learning website. We have the most updated travel advisory was posted, I think, last Friday, and I updated it in the newsletter. So if you go to the Returning and Learning site and you look for the travel advisory and read what it says there, you'll find out what our policy is in the Mansfield Public Schools and in the town of Mansfield. Okay. If my child is fully vaccinated, do they need to have a negative COVID test if they leave the state? Nope. The answer to that is no, as long as it's 2 weeks after their second dose. So remember, in order to be fully vaccinated, if you haven't had the Johnson & Johnson, you got to have your 2 doses and you got to wait 2 weeks after the second dose in order to be considered fully vaccinated, to have that optimal level of protection against the virus. And that is the same as it would be for adults or teachers. And that answer came from one of our school nurses. Where can people find the recording of this presentation? You can find this on the Mansfield Public Schools Events YouTube page, which is actually where you're accessing the presentation right now. We'll keep up a recorded version of the presentation for the next several days leading up. I'm sure I have to look and see how long we're allowed to leave it up on the site there. But I'm definitely going to be posting my informational slides for you to read. They're a little bit more in-depth than the slides I've actually presented to you, but they just have more in-depth notes, so you can actually just flip through it and read it. Let's see. What will students be required to do if they travel during April vacation? Is there a list of steps to follow? Again, please consult the travel advisory and it'll tell you exactly what you need to do. And let me see here. Here we go. So students traveling would need to test negative within 72 hours of arrival on a PCR test or quarantine for 10 days. Those are pretty much the steps. But please read the travel advisory on the webpage. Okay, are the 10th graders still exempt from the 9th grade bio MCAS? The answer to that is yes. Will SATs, MCAS, AP testing be like PSAT, where in-person students use different doors than the VRC, and VRC students are sitting 10 to 15 feet apart while testing? Yes, we're going to do everything in our power. When I think VRC, I'm thinking about students and families with, certain very particular health concerns, and we're going to be very conscientious about that. Trying to have our VRC students test in a different location, use different doors. We're going to be following those same policies. When we do MCAS, we'll potentially have our 11th graders upstairs and our 10th graders downstairs. And VRC students will be testing in a different space where they can spread out and feel more comfortable while they're testing. Are students taking APs supposed to have already selected dates? Absolutely. To my knowledge, we have all those dates in, but if you have a question about whether your child has not selected a testing date, then I would certainly double back with your child and their teacher. I'm wondering why, if a child is quarantining, they couldn't stay live on their class Zoom instead of learning asynchronously. Well, I think, what we are focusing on at this time would be the quick check-in with the students. We really want to move to full in-person, trying to get us back to the most sort of normal delivery of education as possible. How are we handling transmission through school sports? So, we're certainly following all of those policies. I think the way the question is phrased presumes that there is transmission through school sports. And I don't know that we necessarily have the data to support that. So I sort of question the question a little bit, but we have here recently had more students test positive for COVID, but we have, it seems like a lot of that has come to students via other venues, as best we're able to tell. Will VRC students who are enrolled in study skills still be able to access that class? Certainly, if you're a VRC student, then we do not expect that your schedule would change or that your teachers would change at this point. Now, of course, if we have a huge migration of students back and forth, then maybe that could change, but I really don't foresee that happening. So I really don't want our VRC students to worry about that. Is there a possibility that some of the senior activities might be canceled as a result of a bad response to the reopening? I'm not sure I entirely understand the question, but all I can say is that at all times there has been a possibility that senior activities might be canceled. When we put out the information regarding senior activities, it was with a big asterisk bolded phrase that all of this is subject to state and local guidance at the time, and of course, whatever we feel is in the best interest of our students. You know, we have a prom on the books, but right now, event venues, at least, are not able to go over a certain number of students. So we're still waiting for those caps to increase to be able to have prom as an entire class. If we don't expect the caps to increase, then we're going to start troubleshooting around it. But the senior activities certainly are not guaranteed, with the exception of graduation. We've gotten guidance from the commissioner, and I feel very confident that we're going to be able to have graduation on the appointed day. Okay, so what happens if my child is quarantined on the day of their specific MCAS exam? If your child's quarantined, then they would be able to make up the exam at a later date. The state provisions for that every year anyway, and certainly this year, they're gonna definitely be paying attention to that. So every year we have plenty of kids who are sick. You know, it just happens, they're not able to come in for an exam, and we have a whole protocol for managing that. So while it's frustrating, you know, you just want to get it over with and get it behind you. We'll still be able to make that happen. So let's see. When is my child eligible for a vaccine? I don't know the answer to that question. The timeline is dictated by the state there. I think one of my assistant principals just wrote that the website is posted in the YouTube chat. So I don't know where Massachusetts stands with this, but I am hearing and reading in sort of national news that they're starting opening up vaccine eligibility to people as young as 16. But I don't believe that we're quite there yet. So I would continue to consult mass.gov for that answers to those questions, but all good questions. Okay. I don't see any more questions coming over. It is 7:21. I want to thank you all so much for coming on and joining me tonight. Again, I can't believe we're at this point in the school year. What a crazy year we've had. I love the idea of us all being able to come back together in person. And, you know, a lot can happen between now and April 28th. That is one thing that this pandemic has sort of taught and shown me. But we're certainly going to plan to make that happen. And I want to thank you again. Again, please, if you have a cohort change request, please get it in this Friday. And we're going to post the slides on the website. And you should be able to come back to the YouTube presentation at any time and view it, I'm sure, at least within the next 30 days. But thank you again, and have a wonderful evening.